This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.
The case against Kohberger, it's getting more interesting by the moment, really, and we're going to talk about some of those new developments here in just a second. The latest turn of events in the case, the defense is hammering away at crucial new revelations, unidentified male DNA at the crime scene. Now, this isn't exactly super new. We did hear about this a long time ago, but hey, let's point it out more, and maybe there's something to it. Well, prosecutors remain steadfast in their case against Kohberger. His legal team is arguing that this unknown DNA could suggest alternative suspects, or at the very least, cast reasonable doubt. That's the goal. But will this argument hold up in court? Could this be a potential game changer, or is it just another classic defense tactic that ultimately won't sway a jury? To break it all down, the legal significance of the evidence, the defense's strategy, and what we can expect moving forward, joined by attorney and former prosecutor Eric Faddis. Eric, when we are looking at this case and the discovery of the identified male DNA, is it something that you think really could truly shake up the prosecution's case, or is it just another one of the Hail Marys that seems to be being thrown by Ann Taylor as we continue on this journey?
Yeah, Tony, in first hearing about it, it kind of seems like a bombshell, right? It seems like this huge deal that there's other potential male DNA at the scene. But when you really dig into it and what the potential explanations are for that DNA there, it's not overly impactful for me. I think that there are ways the government is going to handle this that could be effective, and certainly the defense it has a right to argue it, but I'm not sure it goes as far as they think they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's I saw it, and I remember hearing about this early on, that there was other unidentified male DNA. I think we just recently learned that it was blood DNA that was found off of. But again, it didn't really strike me as anything all that exciting, quite honestly, because it wasn't found on or really near the bodies. If we're considering the knife sheath was like right there on the bodies, this was on a railing in another part of the house. And the other one was inside a glove that was found outside of the house, kind of out there near the road and such. If you're a defense attorney, though, and you have this, other DNA that has shown up, I would assume this is probably the road you'd want to head down, other than just presenting it here now as possible reasonable doubt in the court of public opinion. Where do you think Ann Taylor is going to take it?
Yeah, I think having Kohberger's DNA at the scene on the knife sheath in the way that it is in proximity to the victim, that could be a nail in the coffin. And so the defense is smart to try to attack that. The way they're attacking that is highlighting this other potential DNA. And if I'm the defense, I'm saying, hey, look, this came from blood. Why is there not only one man's blood on the premises, but two people's blood, two men, two blood samples from males? Now, I think I'm not sure how much blood was actually there. I don't think it was like a huge pool of blood on the inside railing or something. But definitely a route the defense has to go because they don't have a lot of other avenues.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at where the blood was found, a handrail. Okay, I mean, I cook all the time, so I don't currently have a scar on my hand today, but it's a lucky day. Normally, there'd be something going on from me, my knife, and whatever. So a handrail, again, a place you're going to put your hand, and people do get cuts in their hand, and you can find blood there, I'm sure. And a glove outside in a cold weather environment. I've lived in many a cold weather environments. I've lived in college towns, and I've gone for walks at night or any time of the day. And I would say, almost anywhere where it's cold, walk for, 30 minutes outside. You're probably going to find a couple gloves laying on the ground. And again, if you have a glove on, and if you have anything, a hangnail and whatever, you could easily have DNA in it. It doesn't seem like that strong of an argument, but can the prosecution make it that clear to a jury?
I think that is what they're going to have to do, because there is sort of like a sexiness to arguing the defense, saying that, hey, there's this two other male DNA at the scene. So the government really has to neutralize that. They have to take the bite out of that. perhaps by arguing that, hey, look, like you said, this is a college house, and man, I went to college, and it wouldn't be unusual for there to be vomit and spit and all sorts of biological
Yeah.
fluids there. So the fact that there is some biological material from other dudes at this college potential party house, that's not a huge bombshell.
It doesn't seem like it to me either, but I get they're going to throw it out there. Ultimately, at the end of it, Ann Taylor is really trying to push. Look, the way that you got the DNA on Kohberger on the knife sheath, we don't think that that was right. And it's an interesting argument because it's not illegal the way that they covered it. It more so technically violates a policy within the FBI the way that they had gotten that information by going into that private database. Again, anyone could do it if you had the information to do it, if you had the DNA. Again, nothing illegal about it, but that's what they're saying. More so it violates policy than it does actually break the law. But is that enough, though, to get something like that thrown out of court, which would essentially throw the whole case out if you take that out of the equation?
Yeah, I think the judge is going to say, policy is policy. It's not a big deal. It's not germane to the legal issues the court would have to decide. Like you said, this is just as our modern society kind of progresses, there are going to be creative measures that law enforcement and defense have to take to keep up with the times and to improve their cases in a meaningful way. I think that's what the prosecution did, and I don't think a judge is going to find fault with it.
And they're asking, the defense right now, asking for a Franks hearing to look at the alleged omission of DNA evidence. Kohberger's attorneys claim investigators omitted key details about the unknown DNA when obtaining search warrants. They argue that the magistrate judge had known about the DNA. The arrest warrant might not have been approved. Is that going to be a strong enough argument if they, in fact, are granted that Franks hearing?
Hard to win on a Franks hearing. I've done several of them, and because the thing is, the standard that the prosecution had to meet to get the warrant is super low. It's probable cause. And so a judge looking at that is going to say, yeah, it would have been nice to know about these potentially exculpatory pieces of information. But what's most central is that these victims were stabbed to death. There's a knife sheath within the building, and it allegedly has Bryan Kohberger's DNA on it. That is enough in and of itself, regardless of what other facts may have been omitted, to win the day on probable cause and to overcome a Franks hearing challenge from defense.
Howard Blum, the author of the book about the case where he really got in there, really investigated. He was recently on with Megyn Kelly, I believe, talking about this. And he had a very interesting theory. As we'll go back over here to the unknown DNA from on the glove and on the railing. His theory was that maybe Kohberger planted it. Maybe Kohberger put it there to try and throw investigators off. It's an interesting theory, but again, if you're going to do that, why would you put it in such obscure places like over here on the handrail and in a glove somewhere outside? I would think if you're trying to skew someone's investigation, you'd have it right there by the knife sheath or by the bodies or something where it would certainly be identified. I think you're kind of, rolling the dice here that even that DNA was going to be found the way it was.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a level of intrigue to that theory. And keep in mind, Bryan Kohberger was a PhD student in criminology. And so he kind of has some unique insights that not, your normal student would have. That being said, if he was such a criminal mastermind, why did he botch his alibi so terribly? And there are just other missteps that I think a criminal mastermind would not have made. And so, interesting to consider.
It is, and you make a lot of good points there. If he is the criminal mastermind, thought far enough ahead to go, I'm going to throw people off the trail with somebody else's blood. I'm not quite sure where you go get somebody else's blood, quite honestly, that easily to go, I'm going to put this on a rail, I'm going to put this on a glove.
People's blood.
Two people's blood. I mean, I suppose you could figure out a way somehow. I don't know what that would be, and I'm not going to contemplate it really any more than this. But it would be quite a stretch to go that far. And if you're going to go that far, you're exactly right. your alibi is simply you like looking at the stars, or is that more so a reaction to the fact that he got caught? Because he seemed very shocked that he got caught initially. Looked like the deer in the headlights. One of the first things he said was there anybody else? Or something, I'm paraphrasing to that nature. But that's what I'm wondering about. Did he think so closely about all this that he thought if it was him, that it was the perfect crime, and he completely just overlooked the fact that maybe somebody will look at you and ask for an alibi?
It wouldn't be unprecedented for someone who is of reasonably high intelligence, who's engaging in crimes like this, and just thinks they're it, man, and they're not going to get caught. They're going to get away with this. And we saw in some of the body cam footage when Kohberger was driving across the country after this happened with his dad, and they got pulled over. In some of that footage, he totally looks like a deer in headlights. He looks like, oh my God, is this going to be the time when they arrest me for what they think I've done? And so would not be surprising for a criminal to believe that they are so above the law and have done everything right that they won't get caught. And then lo and behold, here we are. I've got to scramble to come up with an alibi.
It makes me wonder. I wish we had other videos of Kohberger in life to compare to, because I do wonder a little bit. Kohberger presents himself as kind of an odd duck, to put it lightly. That makes me wonder, though, is he like that no matter what? If you just caught him like walking down the hall of the university, is he going to have that same kind of weird look on his face? Like, you caught me doing something, even if he really didn't do anything?
Yeah, it's a fair point because, we only have like one point of reference for him in terms of how he presents, and that's in court on this quadruple murder and then some of the body cam info, whatever, or footage. But it's significant to note that like different people present differently, and I've had a lot of cases where the government is like, oh, this dude's acting super suspicious and weird. Well, the guy is just kind of like you said, an odd duck, and sometimes that might appear suspicious when it's truly not.
Yeah, there's a lot of that out there. Let's talk about the mental health records that have now been handed over to prosecutors in the case of Bryan Kohberger. Eric, where do you think this is going to go? What's the pros? What's the cons? Where do you think the prosecution is going to take the information that they're going to unearth in these medical records?
Interesting move, a risky move by defense, because defense, in turning over medical records, likely is waiving any kind of physician-patient privilege that he might have had. So not only could prosecution comb through those records, which they absolutely will, find little tidbits that appear incriminating use against Kohberger, but they could issue additional subpoenas to other medical providers, other doctors and therapists whom Kohberger may have seen, and it could open up a huge can of worms for Kohberger and give the prosecution gifts that they wouldn't have access to otherwise.
So when we're talking about medical records here, are these just specific ones from a specific point in his life, or are these like spanning all the way back to where we saw the allegations where he would have been online in his teen years talking about the visual snow and not having emotional connections to people, and noticing that there was a big difference in his psyche from an early age?
So the medical records that were turned over were likely limited in scope, limited in time, that kind of thing. But the legal effect of turning those over could be a complete waiver of all physician-patient privilege. And so what that means is that the prosecution may be able to go into or at least seek records from years before and learn information about who those providers might have been, what health insurance might have been on board. They can get a health insurance ledger and determine what other providers Kohberger has seen. So it really opens things up, and it's risky. I think defense is hoping there'll be some kind of sympathy or sense that there were mental health issues going on and the death penalty is therefore not appropriate.
Yeah, is this a longer move like this? Is this a longer play to more so save his life, not necessarily not prove his innocence in this case? Because if we do look at these records, we do know from reporting from, I believe it was Howard actually, with the dad, that he's had trouble throughout his life, and there have been issues with him in the past. It is out there. As far as what sort of treatment he got with mental health, obviously he was addicted to heroin for a while. All of these things, not necessarily making a murderer, but does it make a murderer when you put all the pieces together? And this is part of the recipe when you're looking at someone's mental health history to kind of go, yeah, they may have a propensity to possibly do something like this.
While it may contribute to this idea of making a murderer, it may also make him a poor candidate for the death penalty. And I'm just wondering, like you said, if that is kind of the long play that the defense is angling towards, because that can go a long way on the death penalty side. It can go a long way with jurors, with a judge. Mental health is really trending in the criminal justice system. And so I think it's probably defense signaling that, like, hey, if y'all go through the death penalty process, you're likely not going to be able to get it. So maybe let's consider something short of that.
Is this a move that may be out there prior to a trial, maybe for contemplating possibly some sort of a plea deal of some sort?
I think in reading between the lines, that could certainly be a message that's being transmitted. Is like, hey, you aren't going to do great at the death penalty phase because of this mental health stuff, or at least it really presents a risk for y'all, government. It's going to be super expensive, go through the death penalty. The death penalty is issued a lot less frequently now than it used to be. So read in between the lines and give us a life without parole offer, and maybe this whole thing goes away.
Do you think we're going to see anything like that? Do you think that there would be a concession here on the part of the Kohberger camp, or is this going to go to trial no matter what?
I think it has such public attention right now. I don't think either side has any interest in backing down. Is there room for some kind of compromise, like life without parole? I think there's always room for that. But as we get closer to trial, I think the prospects of that get lower and lower.
If true crime is your obsession, we've got you covered. Press subscribe now to the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today for non-stop coverage, expert insights, and in-depth analysis.